I wanted to start the chat really more about the early days of your life, not even the early days of Unity, you know, because obviously we spoke to, and you have to be careful not moving the camera so much because it's giving. It's like I'm roller coaster.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You know, we spoke to your brother yesterday.
Yeah, I know.
And everybody was blown away about sort of his, you know, journey, what he's working on and everything. And I know you had a pretty interesting panel discussion last year with your mom, with Ari, with Ingvar. So can you give us like a little insight of what it was, you know, what it was like growing up in the Helgason household, and, you know, how three sons all became involved in tech and working on pretty amazing things?
Yeah, you know, it's not really a repeatable experiment, so maybe I don't actually know. But you know, I mean, yeah, obviously, like we're born in Iceland. You know, left Iceland when well, I was 10 and Ingvar was 8 and Ari was like 2 or something. Um, and yeah, you know, brought up just around a whole lot of books, a lot of scholarship and kind of medieval philology and linguistics and stuff like that. Not no entrepreneurs inside really. Civil servants on the other side of the family. Kind of top civil servants actually, but you know, still. Um, um, I don't know, like just yeah, a lot of time. You know, parents working from home. My father as a scholar and writing books, and our mother, being a journalist after doing her doctoral thesis. Um, I don't know, like
And it
that.
was,
Yeah.
and you guys were, it was split between what, London and Iceland and
Well, we
Copenhagen,
started in
like all
Iceland, and then
three, or?
yeah. So no. So we, yeah. Well, our mother moved with us to Denmark when yeah. Well, I was 10. My brother's younger. She stayed in Denmark for like 11 years or so, and then moved on to London. Ari went with, and he's now with Index Ventures. You know, after quite a
Yep.
lot of other stuff, and Ingvar sort of bumped around a little bit, lived in Paris for a while, and London, and started a fashion label that eventually brought him to biotech, obviously,
Yep.
as it does. And then I sort of, in a way, had the most straightforward career. I just dropped out of university a whole bunch of times, wrote a lot of code, started a few companies that didn't go anywhere.
Wait, so you were an engineer as well?
Yeah. I mean, like self-taught
I didn't
programmer.
remember that, because sometimes I feel like you're the business guy, like you have an idea,
No,
like.
I was a self-taught programmer. I was, you know, just writing a whole bunch of. I mean, you know, like so I'm born in '77, right? So basically, like 100%, 99% of all programmers of my generation, we learned to program to make video games.
Yep.
And you know, later maybe people learned to make websites and apps, but at that time it was just video games everyone dreamt of.
So
Of
like
course, most of us.
Atari games, or like NES games,
Yeah, well,
or?
I sort of had a weird computer story. My mother had like a really strange early PC, but anyway, like, but we all kind of wanted to make video games, I guess. Or I mean, the few people that learned programming at that time. So, you know, of course, fortunately, most of us didn't make video games because you know,
We have one quick interruption. Is there any way we can have you put your phone down, because it's shaking a lot?
Oh,
And
it's really that bad. I'm sorry.
yeah. No,
Of
it's
course.
fine. It's not a big deal. It's
Well,
just, I want to
no,
make
no,
sure.
it's more a question of where I walk to put it down. Actually,
I know in the
it's
kitchen
like
there's
doesn't
nice.
really
Isn't
stand
there
on its
like a
own.
nice place in the kitchen? So
I'm sure. Maybe just wait a second. There's like a Lego thing. Maybe I can stand it on the Lego thing. Let's see if this works.
just so everybody knows,
Sorry.
we're really doing this live, and it's not, you know. Yeah.
It's like just have to this Lego thing could work. 1 second. Almost time. This work? It's a little tilted backwards.
It's like, it's, yeah.
I know. I'm sorry. I should have planned this better.
It's fine.
I've had other interviews where I did them actually with with the phone, holding it in my hand, and like there have been times when people actually preferred that, but maybe this is okay.
I know.
Anyway, let's see if this works. Now I'm
For now, I guess it's fine. Yeah, you're standing up. It's fine. It's perfect.
It's okay. Okay. So yeah, so I don't know. So I had like a strange yeah, anyway, so I learned to program when I was like 11 years old, and then after high school finished, most of my friends were going to gap years. doing random things. And I dropped into a web agency and was doing kind of web.
And this was in Copenhagen, right?
Yeah, so I was living here. Yeah, exactly. So I just got a a job for a web agency. I was like a really fast, like a web kid. So I was just making websites super fast. So many goddamn websites. And then we ended up writing like content management systems, which is like very kind of what you do at the time. So like everyone else who was programming at that era, like I ended up doing like 5 different content management systems.
And what year is this? This must have been
Like 96 to 2000 odd.
so pre-boom, just right before the boom started, or is it in
Well,
the middle
actually,
of the boom?
through the boom, you know, in Denmark we mostly missed the boom. Like, you know, I didn't really have any. I didn't have any.
Experience of that.
Yeah, like, you know, I wasn't fancy enough. I was too young, and you know, I didn't start a .com
And,
company.
and so you're doing like these CMS websites. You're
Yeah,
you know churning out a ton of code. How how did you come upon the idea of Unity? And okay, two questions. How did
yeah.
you come upon the idea
Sure.
of Unity?
Mhm.
And why did you decide to actually become an entrepreneur? Was there like an inkling that you
Yeah.
wanted to do it, or is it more of yours like,
No, there was a moment actually. There was
yeah,
like a, you know, I was working for this little web agency. I worked for a number of places, but there was like a little agency, like sort of a 10-person software agency. Like they were more like professional. They were just like really, they had craftsmanship. They, you know, they really respected what they were doing, and were very thoughtful. And the founder, I don't know, CEO is too fancy a word. The owner, the managing director, he, you know, he was like a few years older than me. He dropped out of physics like me. You know, he liked the same music as I did, and I was like, I want to be that guy. That's kind of cool. So, you
what
know,
type of
I thought
music was
like,
it? I know I'm interrupting. What type of music was it? Because I know
oh, some weird Uzbeki music and some old Bowie and
overlay
just
stuff like that. Yeah, okay.
all kinds of random stuff.
Yeah.
No, so because you know, he seemed to have this freedom. Like this guy was like, he did what he wanted. He set up the office like he wanted, and you know, he came and went, you know, as to the office as he wanted to. You know, later, of course, I realized I completely misread the situation, right? Because like you know, the CEO is always the person with the least freedom. Like
Right.
that's the
Right.
person, because by sort of by necessity you have to analyze the situation, and then you must do what you deem to be the most kind of efficient, or like, you know, uh, like yeah, effective act. That's what you absolutely have to do. Yeah. Anyway, this guy was working a lot. I guess I didn't quite realize it. So, anyways, I started a number of companies that went absolutely nowhere, just like little things. I did something that kind of looked like what Apple did later with iTunes LP, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it failed, but we did like one, or I think just one album actually, with this interactive cover stuff. It was
Really hard to do that stuff. Like,
yeah, we
because
did
the
raise
music
money
industry
for
is
it. So
tough.
honestly,
Yeah.
it was a nullity of a company. Like
Yeah.
there was no path for it. Um, and then I had an old friend of mine from high school, and we used to kind of, you know, program and listen to Pink Floyd and smoke weed or something. And and he
Which we all kind of did in high school, right? You know,
somebody
Pink
did
Floyd,
maybe.
Dark Side of the Moon, Animals.
Oh
Maybe
yeah,
not weed for me in my case, but you know,
that's
lots of other.
okay. Yeah. So we and he, you know, he's a very creative soul. It's Nicholas Francis. He's a brilliant old friend of mine, still a friend, and he you know, he's a very creative soul. Like, you know, he's done graphics, he's done film a bit, and he just like wanted to express himself. And he was also a programmer, very good, much better than I. And then he you know, he had this idea that he could combine, you know, combine the sort of some of the craft of filmmaking with programming, and, you know, make video games. And so he asked if I wanted to join him on some projects, and we did a lot of brainstorming about that and had some crazy ideas, good or bad.
What was the craziest idea? I always like to
So,
ask this because, like, you know,
the core, I mean, okay, so the sort of core feeling or like intuition we had was that, you know, we were gamers. Like our whole generation was sort of, well, all the boys at least were gamers. Now it's everyone, but at the time it was sort of mostly the boys. Um, and we had played a lot of video games, and at some point we sort of lost interest to some level. And we are talking about why did we lose interest, and one of the sort of ideas or thoughts was, you know, because most video games, just if they relate at all to the real world, they mostly just use it as a sort of a backdrop against which to shoot bad guys. We didn't feel there was like great storytelling. We didn't feel there was like kind of a relevance, I guess. So we had ideas about telling kind of people stories to understand the world. And we were interested in conflict, so we're thinking about like conflicts between like Israelis and Palestinians, and
So like
just like
really real world game playing.
yeah, trying to delve into the conflicts and like understand the complexities and like all the agendas and all the things that are going on. Yeah. So we had some
More like the
game design
UN,
and stuff.
not more like the UN, not like like gameplay with the UN or something kind of could be.
I mean, we didn't go there, but it could
Yeah.
have been. We had so many different ideas, mostly bad, honestly. Like Anyway, so ultimately we settled on a much simpler, like a sort of a simple 3D game with a rolling ball and some stuff. But in the meantime, I had actually been busy with something else for a while. So he had found this German guy online, and they started collaborating. Who became the third founder, or arguably the first or second, because I kind of joined a little later when I was done with my detour. So it became the three of us, and first we just did a whole bunch of game prototypes. We did a lot of weird stuff.
And how old were you guys?
Like I was like 25 when I joined. Joachim Ante was still our CTO, still CTO of Unity. He was way younger. He's like 19 or something when he started doing this stuff. And he, by the way, turned out to be by far the best programmer of the three of us. So I was not bad, but there's like two orders of magnitude ahead of me. So we were kind of writing this game engine prototype, like sort of protean game engine for this different games. And because we kept changing what games we wanted to make and which prototypes and the ideas, the game engine had to become quite flexible, or like because we kept changing what we wanted to do.
And what is a game engine? I know I know you and I know it, but the audience maybe.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah.
30 seconds what a game engine is.
So it's the software that operates the game, that animates, that calculates motion, does audio, takes input and like changes the graphics and so on, makes special effects on screen, and also the tooling around it that helps you kind of produce the game. Yeah. So you can think of it as like the camera and the editing suite and the set, sometimes the actors, and ultimately also the projector for film. Like it's basically the whole thing. It's a like the default state is just like a little scaffolding around the game you're making, but ours became more and more complex, and eventually became this kind of all singing, all dancing thing that became what sort of the modern era. We didn't invent this, but a number of people had done this before us. The generic game engine, the game engine that can do many types of genres, many type of platforms, and kind of like transitions you can transition with from game to game to game. I mean, we started writing this stuff like 18 years ago or so. Before that, most people were doing sort of special purpose game engines. So like a racing game engine and a fighting game engine, and
yep. Lost you there. 1 second, we lost you there, David.
And that we could try to lose you?
Yeah, no, we're back. We've got you.
Okay, sorry. I think there was a phone call coming in or something. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We're doing it live. There's these issues that happen. This, people know we're not pre-recording this stuff, right? So,
it's awesome. No,
they pay the money for
live. After doing this for a while, we decided that maybe our kind of excellence wasn't actually making the games, but that the game engine we had written was kind of interesting. Most game engines at the time were really good, maybe even for specific genres, but also hard to use because they were all focused on, they all basically came from a world where big teams were making big games for big budgets or somewhat big budgets. The indie, the small team was kind of an upcoming thing. We were one of those teams. We arguably failed as a game company or a game team, but we basically brought out the technology that was maybe not perfect for any one genre, definitely not perfect for any one genre, but it was easy to pick up, easy to get started with. So this all business can be sort of boiled down to kind of X multiplied Y by Y. Like everyone else, and there's quite a lot of game engines at the time, they were trying to sell their engine for a lot of money to a few people because it was actually hard to use. Only a few people could even use them. We were trying to sell ours for a little bit of money to a lot of people.
Which is basically that's the Silicon Valley model during
it's a model for right? It's a lot of then we picked up the democratization of game development, which became our slogan. But honestly, like, it's something that, software has been doing for a very long
Yeah.
time. And nothing wrong with that. So, we proudly kind of, put that on our backs and launched with that. And, then it was a
What year was
struggle.
this?
And
What year was this?
so we launched sort of we called it 1.0. It was arguably a beta of sorts, but, we also had like reduced pricing the first year
Did you
and
think of
so on.
calling it 2.0 maybe? Because Oracle, the famous story with Oracle's Larry Ellison said, we're not calling it Oracle 1.0. It's got to be 2.0 because
That's
the U.S.
funny.
government's not going to buy 1.0. I'm
That's
just
very
thinking,
clever. We were not this sophisticated. No. We did 1.0 in the summer of 2005, and then we didn't do 2.0 until like October '07. So like like a bit over 2 years later. And we didn't do it until we had like really made a big change and everything was better and more features and
And
2.0.
Did you raise any money for that first 1.0?
Not
What was
really.
life?
No,
What was
actually.
life like for David back then? What were you eating? What were you doing? Like, what was like?
It wasn't so bad. We lived in Copenhagen. We had our bicycles. We rented little apartments. I had saved up a bit of money in my previous work. I mean,
It
Nicholas
wasn't
would
like ramen
make web.
noodles. It wasn't like ramen noodles in San Francisco, living in a basement or something.
No, we lived in a basement, and
Okay, so there was a basement. Okay.
Yeah, it was like a very low slung flat ground floor apartment, but it was kind of terminally dank. You
Did
could
you
not
guys
clean
all
that
live
place.
there?
Well, Nicholas and Joachim actually rented together. I rented like a room just around the corner, and then we just worked out of this place for a couple of years, and then we later got like a tiny office. It was just, there was no money in, no money out. We had some debt. I think Joachim got a bit of pocket money from his parents. We actually borrowed some money as well. Just kind of
But
to
no
have a little office and
VC,
so on.
no angel money, none of that in that first.
I mean, not what you'd call angel money. I mean, lending money from somebody's father is kind of angel money, right? But it's like there was no like safe note or nothing fancy.
Right.
These were like kind of simpler times, and some of these concepts existed in Silicon Valley, and they were getting documented online, but we're just learning about them sort of slowly.
And of course, this is post.com boom, right? So the bust already happened. Where I want to get to next in the conversation is go to like some fun anecdotes after the company you've raised the money and everything. But I want to focus on this like early stage question was, were you afraid at all, or you think you were going on the right path, or because you were 25, 26, 27, like everybody around that age, like, oh, like lots of people are becoming doctors, lawyers, accountants, whatever. I don't know, in Copenhagen, whatever the profession is by then, I don't know if you have to make a decision by then, but like, did you feel that you were on the right path?
It didn't feel like a risk, honestly. Like, we're programmers, like, we were getting better at our craft by doing this.
Got it.
So, I mean, what is really the worst that can happen is that you go and take the job. It doesn't seem like a risk, honestly. I dropped out of university countless times, like 4 times probably. Well, one of the times you can argue I wasn't really actually.
How did your mom like that if you dropped out?
They were surprisingly flexible on that. They didn't seem to mind. I asked my mother later, weren't you worried? And she was like, no, not really. I mean, she claims that she wasn't too worried because she said, you just went at it. You went at all these projects with so much energy. You were not like zoning out or anything. So, and I don't know. She claims she wasn't worried. It didn't seem like a risk, honestly. And so I dropped out of all of these projects. First I didn't think actually I would be a career programmer. I thought I would just be a scholar. Like I would go into linguistics or medieval stuff. I was studying Arabic for a while and things like that.
Wow.
Physics and psychology.
I didn't know about the Arabic or the linguistics. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's like a lot of weird stuff I did. But the main thing is that once I actually started doing like the game stuff is fun. It was challenging. But once we started doing the engine, I just fell in love with the customers. These kind of creative souls that like didn't have a lot of budget and they were trying to get something going. And this is sort of during the the rise of the indie game movement, which is this kind of people coming out of basements and weird places to do kind of creative, strange, different games
from anywhere in the world, because being connected to the internet, no matter the budget. And so,
and everyone was brought up, we were all kind of brought up playing games. And so actually Nicholas formulated it, my co-founder Nicholas formulated it really well. He said, I think, and he turned out to be very right, that when people grow up, they sort of want to produce the type of media they consumed as children. And ours was a generation where not everyone, but like a big section of the boys were gamers. So it wasn't strange that many people at the same time as us wanted to make video games. And then one of the other things he said was like, and I think this group of people need something like Final Cut Pro or Photoshop, like an easily accessible tool you can install on a computer. It doesn't require like a big team to operate. You can just get started and produce something. And yeah, that was kind of honestly, we were working on this before he had these insights, but I think these insights really informed some of our sort of business decisions on pricing and how we framed it and, website design, everything. Yeah,
and,
superb insights.
And you created a business plan for it, which is not what most entrepreneurs do. Like, why did you do that?
A business plan?
Yeah, you said you created a business plan. And you had like a 10-page list. I remember.
Oh, no, I didn't tell you this. Yeah, no, you're actually right. Okay,
you told me
so
this.
no,
Because
that's
one thing
true.
everybody always says in business school. I went to undergraduate business school, and they're like, "Don't create a business plan. Don't do this. Don't that." And I heard, I'm like, "You told me the story. You created a business plan." I think you even
didn't get it. We didn't get the memo, so the first business plan was actually written with Joachim's father, who since passed away from cancer, sadly. But he was sort of, yeah, he's a great guy, and he was a sort of a business guy. Like he had worked on construction projects, no software, and he just sat down with us for like 2 days and helped us kind of formulate a business plan. It was basically him asking questions and us answering them in writing. And he didn't necessarily need to understand what we were answering, but it was actually helpful. I mean, we were so green, and there were some decent ideas in there. Of course, the moment it was written, we never used it again. But like, I think it was helpful to kind of focus us. Yeah. I'm not for writing business plans, but maybe it was useful for us in that moment.
Okay, so you've given.
By the way, I found like an old, like a second version of this where we apparently updated it. So maybe I was wrong about never having gone back to it. And it reads. It's an embarrassing document. It has no numbers. We had no idea of the world. It reads like a sort of a. It reads. Did I drop out?
No,
okay.
I'm here.
No, okay.
We're here.
Some phone stuff. So it reads like a love letter written by a teenager. Like it's just like full of vague ideas and typos. Anyway.
But it worked out. I mean, it clearly worked out in the end. But okay, so where we are in the talk, I think we kind of have a really good idea of what David, what you were like when you were growing up, your early 20s, going through your mid 20s. Now we're at this point, let's say we're Unity, you've got the name, right? So Sequoia, you say, okay, I've raised some money, we have some success. Tell us about how Sequoia became involved, which one of the biggest most influential venture capital firms in the world. Sure. How did they get involved? And they told you, I'm assuming they said, David, you got to move to San Francisco because we're going to scale the hell out of this business. Like what?
No, it wasn't really like that actually. So one of the regrets of starting a company was actually that all my friends were moving abroad, and I was kind of stuck in Denmark. So I kept telling my friends, like, I think one day we need to move this. And we had some ideas of moving to London, and it was all crazy talk. But what happened is that San Francisco has this game developers conference every year. It's the biggest kind of developer conference. It's awesome. So we were going there every year basically, and our booths got larger, and we had more traction and things were happening. I would travel there a lot from Copenhagen, and what started happening is we actually hired a small business team in San Francisco, and every time I made it to San Francisco, there was just my schedule got more full. So it was just the gravity there was so clear. And then I basically, in the spring of 2009, we had been trying to look for venture capital. We had a lot of meetings, but nothing was really taking. And
so 7 years after you started Unity, 2009, right? 6 years after.
Yeah, arguably, yes.
You're finally looking at venture capital 6 years later, basically.
Yeah. So the story is that we were growing. Spring of 2009, we're like 30 people. The iPhone is out. Unity supports iPhone game development. Things are going really fast. We've learned a ton about this stuff. It's not necessarily a well-run business, but there are many good things we're doing, and our customers love it. And there's suddenly like a need that wasn't so clear before for this type of software. A lot of good things. Really busy, kind of overwhelmingly busy. I'm in San
You were CEO at
Francisco.
the time? You were still CEO?
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I didn't really mention that, but sort of, we were coding. Nicholas was 10 times better than I, and Joachim probably 10 times better than he. So when you're sitting next to somebody who's like 100 times better coder, like you might as well not code. Like, whatever you do in a few hours is what they do.
And have you
Whatever you do
coded
during
at
the whole
all
month
since,
is what they do
yeah. And
in
have
a
you
day of
coded at
2 hours.
all since those early days?
Not really, no.
Okay.
And no, I don't miss it either. The business stuff is really fun.
I wasn't going to ask you if you missed it, yeah, but I'm
It's
curious.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I really liked it. I had a beautiful like 10-year
Yeah.
career coding, and I
Yeah.
actually enjoyed that a lot. I was a pretty good coder until I figured out how good these guys were. So basically, like, I started doing sort of businessy stuff, and eventually somebody told us that, a company needed like a CEO, and we decided that it might as well be me. It wasn't necessarily a permanent assignment, and it was definitely not my license to kind of boss the other guys around. It was more like I would do the business stuff, outgoing customers, whatever. Nicholas would sort of design the software. It's like that's kind of his flair and genius. And Joachim would kind of be the architect and build it. And honestly, for a while,
Did you
he
know
wrote
what you were
most of it.
getting into when you became the CEO? Did you have any
No, not
because
really.
you referenced early in the conversation, oh, to be CEO, you have to do all these things. And my example from it, when you were doing the CMS and working on websites wasn't exactly the best example of, setting as a CEO. So, becoming CEO, and I guess we'll fast forward a little bit, how difficult was it to be CEO of such a fast growing company?
It was super hard. I nearly failed at it like several times. Um,
What do you mean
uh,
failed? What's an example?
so I mean, different phases of a company, and I went through a lot. Like, we started 3 founders.
Yeah.
We went through all these phases up to like basically 500 people. Yeah, when I retired from that and handed the baton off to John Riccitello, who's the current CEO, who's an amazing guy, a good friend, and just a wonderful person. So yeah, how does it go? Like, so different phases call for different sort of things, but one thing that you always have to be doing is you have to kind of know what the company needs and make sure that happens, whether you do it or somebody else do it, right? And there were times when I really had a good feeling for what the company needed, and I was able to deliver it. And then there was just times when I couldn't, and I was confused and I was stressed out, and I wasn't born very organized. I've learned quite a lot of organization along the way. I'm still not the most organized person, but I sort of became organized as I needed to some level. But sometimes I felt behind on that, and yeah, it was a mess. And honestly, the worst time one was after we raised money from Sequoia. So I sort of stumbled into Sequoia's office on an introduction by Diane Green, the founder of VMware.
Yeah,
Who's
VMware.
a titan of our industry, and also was on the board of Google and MIT and whatever. She's amazing.
And how did that introduction happen? I'm actually curious.
Yeah, so super random, and honestly could have gone really, really badly. So I was stumbling around San Francisco after Game Developers Conference in 2009 spring, and I just had a series of meetings after the event, and the last meeting was supposed to be down in the valley with NVIDIA, some guy, like, yada yada. Wasn't a very useful meeting. I mean, they're great guys, but like the meeting was a bit random and not very well organized. And then during the meeting, my phone keeps ringing, which is never a good sign. Same number like 6 times or something.
Like, what's
And at
going on?
the end of it, I realized by calling the number back after the meeting, I suppose, that this guy, I told this guy that had contacted me about maybe using Unity for a startup. I told him to meet me in San Francisco, so it's like an hour away or more. And he had been waiting for me for an hour now, somewhere in San Francisco, and he was supposed to go back, and I had to wait for him, and I was really annoyed with myself, and I was supposed to meet my then girlfriend, and she was upset. It was just like a shitty day, yeah? And entirely 100% my fault.
Yeah.
So I was really, really frustrated, and then at myself. And then this entrepreneur arrives, to have a meeting with me, and there's this kind of woman with him, slightly older woman, and I didn't know who she was, and so she introduces herself, but I didn't recognize the name, honestly. And she was like advising him, and like I try to be, I was very polite, but inside I was just boiling with frustration, yeah. Mostly at myself. And I could have, like, I was even like sort of saying rude things just in my anger at myself, inside myself, but they didn't hear or see it. I was just like, so she introduces herself and she's like, yeah, you know,
Internal
I've started.
workings of David said. So the
I
entrepreneur always, right? It's a combination of positivity and self-hate.
so she introduces herself. You know, I don't recognize the name, and she's like, yeah, I started a couple of companies, and I'm like, yeah, lady, like everyone started a couple of companies. Internal monologue. And then she said, yeah, you know what, you might have heard of one of them, it's called VMware.
You're like, oh
And
no, I haven't. What's that? Oh
no,
yes.
I knew. So I realized anyway. So we became friends, and she became an advisor and investor, and she's just a wonderful person. And so she introduced me to Sequoia. By that time, I'd actually found a few term sheets because we were growing quite fast in the spring, and you know, so we had actually some offers from a few different companies. And then I was so lucky that, you know, I met them basically when the time was up. We had to pick a term sheet basically. So I stumbled into Sequoia's offices on a Friday, whatever, and Rule of Bota, who I'd never heard of before, was, you know, one of their awesome partners, former CFO of PayPal and stuff. Uh, he's there, and you know, I do a.
Oh, lost you.
Sorry. No, there we go. And I do a pretty decent, I guess, job of pitching Unity to him. And so
Well, yeah, you had to. I mean, you got the term sheet, and
by then I was kind of on a roll.
right.
I think were like I was well prepared. So he
And
asked me to come back
how
on a
old were you then? You
Monday.
were 30. You must have been.
I don't know, like 32 maybe.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Ingvar mentioned to me that when you moved from Copenhagen to San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
you basically were kind of felt like you went into a black hole because you were so busy for a while. So
Yeah,
is what he
it was
told me.
awful. Yeah, we're actually getting there. So because then,
Yeah.
so they asked me to come back on a Monday. I pitched
Yep.
the partnership. It was a really bad meeting because there was a lot of difficult questions that I didn't have answers for, like customer acquisition costs and various rates of things. Like I had no feeling for that. We were just not very, we're not a very well-run company. Things were doing well,
Right.
going well, but like we didn't really understand those mechanics. It was a simpler time. It
It
was
was
also
earlier days.
before
It
it was
was
before software as a service. Like, you know, we were
yep.
actually selling licenses in the
Yep.
old way. It's not very good. But we're growing very fast and customers were loving us. And there was not a bad, I mean, there was many good things about it. So then they basically offered to invest, you know, $5 million, whatever. And I was moving at the same time, essentially. Yeah. So
And that was pure equity on private placement and
yeah, like yeah, it's just like a nice round. I mean, they bought a little bit of secondary stock as well, just because they wanted a bit more stock. But it was fine. Like, and they've been a great partner ever since. And Rulaf is a great guy and a great friend. Super consistent guys, actually. Like, really impressed with them. But then, like, you know, I moved to San Francisco. We were like probably sort of going on 50 people when I moved. Um, and it was just a disaster. Like, you know, I was so confused. The company had suddenly so many options. Like, there's so many things going on. Like, you know, everyone wanted to talk to us. We were sort of becoming kind of I mean, we're a small company, but it's sort of an interesting thing, you know, the leading tool for developing iPhone games. Like, just a lot of people wanted to talk to us and partner with us. And, you know, I left the engineering team behind in Copenhagen. Now it's quite distributed. Back then it was mostly there. My co-founders remained in Copenhagen. So, you know, we used to have this kind of swivel the chair communication, which is like we're very much in tune with each other always. And suddenly, like, I'm just confused. I'm running around the valley, like, kind of a lot of fancy people want to talk to me, but I'm not landing these ideas. You know, there's so many things we could be doing. Sequoia has some great ideas, super insightful, but we didn't have the capacity to kind of work on them. The good thing is engineering remained mostly undisturbed. Business actually grew because people wanted our stuff, but there
yeah.
was months where, like, you know, the leadership was just confused. Like, board meetings would just be kind of a shit show, where I would show up and, like, you know,
And
we just change from board meeting to board meeting. We just change our strategy without kind of
right,
telling the board.
right.
Most of their decisions were pretty good, actually. Like, well, many of them, but ultimately it was just a mess, you know. And they were frustrated with us. And had they just like given me like a little bump like this, I would have resigned or been fired. And they were very actually patient with me and let me kind of make my own mistakes. And, you know, we worked it out. And then a few months later, things were actually fine. And I think I did some of my best work in the following years.
So that's
But yeah,
2000, probably 2010 to
10, 11,
2014.
12,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
13, 14 actually, yeah.
yeah, okay. So we talked a lot about of like the internal workings of Unity, the early days, through to the Sequoia check.
Mhm.
Um, you have an incredible, I don't want to say it's a cult love of indie gamers, but indie gamers love David Helgason. Like, I mean,
Well, I think
I mean,
there's a few people that remember me from those days, but like,
yeah, but there was
mostly
like, there's this thing you would have a
I'm not
Unity
fronting
tweet.
this company anymore. Like, I love it. I'm on the board. I think
Yeah, yeah, no,
the
but this is, I mean, this is a long time ago. But, um, do you feel that in a way, what you guys built, you've kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of these indie developers to have their own small businesses across the globe, or was it just
yeah, I
sort
mean,
of,
like, not me, but I mean, Unity, of
or
course. Yeah,
Unity as
like,
a whole,
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
you,
Like,
but like the
no, no,
company
no, I
you
get it. Yeah,
built,
no, absolutely. No, I know
the
you
team
said
that
that. I
you
just
built?
wanted to make,
Yes, yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted nobody to understand or to think that I was taking credit for this. No, it
yeah,
was super collaborative. Inside the
yeah.
company, it was wonderfully collaborative. We were doing a lot of great decisions, but most of them actually honestly felt like they made themselves. Like there was just like there was an elegance, like things were just moving fast, and we were in tune, and there was a lot of trust, and people had a lot of leeway inside the Unity. Some of the greatest decisions didn't even come from the sort of leadership and founders; it just came from people doing work. Um, and at this time, yeah, you're right. Like there was a really, really fast growth of kind of indie game development. Unity was also getting better, so we could also sell to larger companies, and eventually we got really good at that. Um, and no, you're right. Like there was a lot of people at the time who were finding their footing, making games maybe for the first time or establishing companies. And many of them used Unity, and it was very affordable, and we were there to support them. And it was buggy, but we'd fix the bugs. And there was a real kind of, I think people felt that we were really there for them. And I think they still do
Which
actually.
is
But
important. Which is important as a company because
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know
There was a
you're
there was a
create.
feeling of generosity. Like we were there not to rip them off, not to
Yep.
grab percentage of their revenue, but really just kind of to give them great tools. And we
Because
failed all the
they
time
weren't
at
just
that.
let's say numbers on an Excel spreadsheet.
No,
They
no, no. And
were
we started doing like a small conference back in 2007 already, but that conference series grew, and we traveled the world, and we'd before Corona we'd hug and handshake
yeah.
all over the world, yeah, and like a lot of friendships. And Unity as a company was always very porous. Like we have a lot of employees more now who would be friends with our customers and just like really kind of personal contacts, yeah.
Do people still recognize you when you walk in the street, walk down the street?
I mean, on game conferences, yes,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's not like
Do they ask for your autograph?
it's happened somewhere, but no, it's not a big deal.
Okay,
I never felt any urge to kind of be famous. I just, the company needed the face, and it seemed to
yeah.
work, and I was happy to do the work.
So let's get to the next part of the conversation. I want to get to this part where you make the decision. You say, okay,
Hmm?
I spent enough time as CEO. I even seen the articles online with quotes. It was like, I failed as CEO, blah, blah, blah. They took it out of context. I don't know, those articles they loved.
That's
And,
fine. Okay.
and of course, before I met you, I did a lot of research and I didn't realize that you'd be as cool in person as,
Oh,
the article. Yeah, I was, of course, we have a lot of fun together and wish I was in Copenhagen now. And of course, last year, stayed a few days with you in Copenhagen, and you were
yep.
visiting Italy. So it's kind of the context of why I wanted you to speak, to Tech Tally, because it's a global event, and we both love Italy. But I want to know, what were you thinking when you said, okay, I want to no longer be the CEO. I'm going to bring somebody in to be that CEO, and I'm going to step back.
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that decision? Why did you make that decision? And who helped
Yeah.
with that?
So, I mean, this is sort of many stages, honestly. Like, actually, when we were still like three programmers in a basement, we had this idea we should hire like a professional CEO. And in one of these kind of weirdly sort of almost when I think back, it's almost like a dreamlike stupidity. It's like we actually literally put up these kind of pieces of paper in the business school with little like phone number strips looking for a CEO. I'm not kidding. This actually happened
Like in
back
New York,
like
like looking for a nanny
yeah,
or a
like a
cat
roommate
or
or
yeah,
yeah,
a
exactly.
mover. Yeah, this
Exactly.
was a
So
CEO.
we
I mean,
literally
that would
we
have been a good
literally did this.
job. Come on, it worked out. I mean,
But the thing is, like, whenever we actually had applicants, like, we had by then learned more. And, of course, at some point we realized there's a real value to being founder led. And we understand, maybe we're not the smartest people, maybe we're not the most experienced people, but we understood our community really, really well. And there was a real value there. So of course, at some point we're like, no, let's actually just, keep David as CEO for now. And like I said, I think I did a very good job some of these years, and we did some great things together. And then I actually met John Riccitello. He had recently exited Electronic Arts. He was sort
He
of,
was the CEO there, right?
yeah, he was there for a while. He'd done many other things in his life. He's a very experienced person with a lot of interesting things in his background. Um, and so he was sort of looking for interesting companies to work with, collaborate with, invest in, maybe take board seats. And so I met him, summer of 2013, and we really connected really well. Like he
And who
really
asked
got what I
you
was
to be
up
on the
to.
board? Did he say
Huh?
I want to? Did he say I want to join the
No,
board, or were
not,
you
not,
like
not no,
nervous to call him and ask him and say, "Oh, can we get JR?"
no.
No.
So basically, first we had this great meeting. He really
Yeah.
got what I was up to. Then we actually happened to cross paths in Stockholm in the autumn. And it was just like he was having dinner with the Mojang guys, and I was having dinner with some Unity team members because we have an office there. Um, and so after dinner, like kind of late, we probably shared a bottle of wine in some hotel lobby, kind of debating the state of the world. And like we were kind of, as I think you said somewhere, like completing each other's sentences. Like it was just a real kind of a meeting of minds, and we agreed on a lot of things. And he was pointing out stuff I didn't know or didn't realize, and I was, of course, teaching him about Unity, and it was just very inspiring. So later that autumn, I asked him to join the board of Unity, and he did as an independent board member. And then he's like, the guy is a maniac. Like he works like nobody has, and I've never met anyone who works this hard actually. And he's, so he's a few years older than I, so apparently he can take it because he's been doing it for a very long time. So even as a board member, he was traveling with me, a couple of days per week sometimes, and being meetings with me, meeting partners with me, and his network is insanely good, and he knows a lot of things, and his toolbox is very broad, like from HR to finance to strategy and tech and all this stuff. So it was very inspiring to work with them. And sort of during that year of him being on the board, we actually had talks about him taking over at some point. And then, that late 2014, basically a year later after he joined the board, there was a great moment to do that.
And did you consult with anybody when you were making the decision? Was there?
Yeah, we debated with investors, the board.
Yeah. But you personally,
co-founders.
when you were making the decision, was there,
Well, it wasn't my decision. Like it was a group. I mean, like, it's never
right.
like, it's never a decision. Like it's never one person's decision
Right.
for somebody to be CEO of a right. venture-funded tech company. The good thing is, we ended up agreeing, and it was the right thing to do. And people are a little worried because there's always worries. And then after a few months of him being in the job, I think even the skeptics saw that it was a great thing, and he's done a fantastic job ever since.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
mean, no question about it. So, okay.
No, it's fair. But there were critics. People were worried. People were worried about, changes are always worrisome.
True. But I guess, looking back, it worked out.
Well, I knew him. I knew him. I knew it would be great because we'd worked so closely. Yeah?
The confidence of, one of the founders, right? It's kind of, sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, but I think in this case it worked out. So okay, so we've talked about a bunch of things so far. I want to get into the last part of the talk, which is sort of questions from the audience and some questions that I put together, because awesome. We've got about 10 minutes left. I know joined a little bit late, so I want to give everybody their
I started late. I'm sorry about that. I have time after if there's no schedule. I'm happy to just keep talking. It's always pleasant to talk to you.
Yeah, well, and I enjoy it as well. So
sure.
Absolutely, one of my favorite conversations always. Okay, so some questions here. How did you find your first customer base, and what was it like to find that product market fit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as I sort of mentioned, like we were an indie game company, like 3 founders, 1 graphic artist, doing a lot of stuff, or trying to make a lot of different games. And arguably failing. We did put out 1 game and it sold rather badly. So I think, and we had been building
the product.
What was the name of the game? It's called Goo Ball. There's another game called
Okay.
Goopball that is not like
Okay.
that came later, like no
Got it.
relation, and
Got it. Got it.
I'm not upset about them stealing the name. It was like a generic name, but it's a good game. I mean, the second one is good. There's no relation, but no. So I think we were that group, and we designed Unity for ourselves, and we had one graphic artist that was used to kind of 3D modeling applications, mostly Maya, so Unity was sort of the editing tools had to be kind of inspired by that. Some of it was actually inspired by Final Cut Pro, which is a video editing suite, funny enough. But so I think maybe it was luck, maybe not. But I mean, we designed it for ourselves, and it turned out our needs were quite similar to those of our initial customer base. I guess a lot of companies actually start like this, right? Yeah. So the product market fit was not that hard to find. It was hard in that Unity was buggy. There was problems. It was not lacking features. We were not very experienced in the games industry. So a lot of things that would probably have been obvious to more experienced people were not obvious to us. So we missed. I mean, it was like a few years of like knocking out product problems and shortcomings and adding things that probably should have always been there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it took about 4 years or so to get to that product market fit.
I mean, it's not a binary thing, right?
Right.
So
yeah,
when we launched, there was some people that thought it was great and for whom it sort of like solved their immediate problems. And then we could the thing is, game development takes some time, right? So if you put something out and you're willing to iterate really fast and people have some trust in you, and maybe they didn't right away, but they started having some trust in us. We seemed like consistent guys. We always showed up. We would respond to people and try to help them. I think we could sort of evolve the product kind of with our first customers. It could have gone badly because it's really hard. Like game technology is just complicated. You're building like big complicated things, and if you get delayed, then people don't get what they need. So we were probably kind of, it was pretty tight to make it actually work, and we definitely frustrated some of our early customers and so on. But just by a manic work ethic, and Nicholas and even more Joachim being unbelievably productive programmers. I mean, we were able to sort of keep up with it until sales were enough that we were able to hire a couple of good people. By the time we did, we were lucky and good to hire some extremely good people that are still with us. Aras Planskevicius is one of the best programmers I've ever met, and he was the first kind of proper hire.
You attract that talent because Unity is a great company. The vision is
charming.
Really great.
We were charming. The visual was interesting, and sort of people sort of saw that. I mean, people were suspicious initially. Like, can they? I mean, not can they do it, because that wasn't clear, or it wasn't verifiable. But more like, are they for real?
Right people? Yeah.
And but I don't know. I guess we were good enough. Yeah, and then we brought in these people that really helped us and made it possible. We couldn't have done it on our own, obviously.
Next question. What parts of the original game engine are still in place? Is there an ancient mechanics code still in the Unity engine, or has everything been entirely replaced as the time has passed? And that question was from Sam Snyder.
Oh, okay, cool. I mean, actually, I don't exactly know. I think most things have been rewritten and replaced. We're adding some really, really cool sort of replacement or even sort of new alternatives to our old subsystems. Some of the old design of the component-based model, which has shortcomings, but is really, really good to express ideas and to design with, are still there. But even those are being evolved. I'm sure there's some old systems, but actually even the input system is now replaced. Like, I think we're getting there, having replaced most of it.
So now you've had, okay, so we've covered a ton of questions. I've got 2 last questions.
Sure.
But I want to really segue a little bit. This point that you're at in your life right now, you've succeeded entrepreneurially. I mean, the question is it beyond your wildest dreams, or did you expect this?
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm talking from the entrepreneurship side of having this product in so many people's hands, not the financial side or anything.
No, that's who knows about that? No, it's just wonderful. I mean, like, you know, in sort of the way we try to understand our market share, like in big parts of the industry, it's over 50%. I remember one of the sort of early
Wow.
dreams of Joachim was, it's crazy. I mean, one of the early dreams of Joachim, I remember he said this a long time ago, is like, my dream is that one day Unity will be sort of the default first choice for people making video games. He knew that like, you can't have 100%, but you know, it should be sort of
Yeah.
default. It should be where people go to, and then maybe they do something else if it doesn't quite fit their needs, and yada
Yeah.
yada. And obviously that's sort of to some level absolutely happened, which is great. Yeah, no,
Right.
it's crazy, and like knowing that, you know, Unity software is running on like literally billions of devices. It's just, you know, that's
It's pretty amazing. So what games are you playing right now? Another question. What games you
oh
like? What games are you playing right now?
yeah. So I honestly don't play a lot of games. I try a lot of games. I download a lot of games, but
There was
honestly, I
that
don't
game
have.
you were playing last year that you loved, the Dragon one. So I can't remember.
Oh,
Dragonville
was
or something.
I
Yeah.
don't know, Merge Dragon, maybe Merge
Urge
Dragon.
Dragon. Yeah, something like
Oh,
that.
yeah, that was interesting experience. Very strange game. Very bizarre. Dreamy like thing. Um, my favorite games are actually games that the game industry is a great place, and there's so much talent, and people have made video games for a long time, and yada yada, and you know, they would have made games without Unity for sure. Um, the dreams that make me really happy, the games that make me really happy are games that might not have been made without Unity. So, you know, when you got really interesting teams that don't that come at it maybe without having the ability to necessarily write their own engine or something, where it's just like it's so left field and strange and inspiring. Those are, I guess, my favorite games.
So
Um,
what's next? What's next for David? You know, outside of all the professional success, outside
yeah.
of, you know, everything in
So
your life,
so
like
when I stepped out of being CEO of Unity, you know, I get my strategy fixed by being on the board. Like, you know, I love the company. I think it's great. What I really missed instantly was like kind of running between small teams, because you know, a bigger company is actually just a lot of little teams doing stuff, and I, you know, running around between different teams, debating with them, arguing, you know, giving them some good ideas, and but then seeing them, you know, pick better ideas from their own shelves, and then you know, being able to fund them, because you know, you give them more team members and funding to kind of keep doing their thing. And I really miss that, and I honestly just find that in being an angel investor and helping startups. So you
and
know, out of
is there a particular focus? You know, so now you're okay. So you're saying you're an angel investor.
I'm basically a full-time angel. That's I think, you know, I'm on the Unity board. I'm on a few other boards. Besides that, I'm a full-time business angel, um, and you know, informal advisor to a whole bunch of friends and people. Um,
And that's how we
yeah,
met,
how to
right?
think
That's
about
how
the,
we met originally.
yeah,
You,
obviously, yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, um, yeah, just like you know, I love entrepreneurs. I love hanging out with them. I love learning. I have very broad taste. I do a lot of things in a lot of different fields. Everything, I mean, like some games and, you know, developer software and other types of software. I mean, all kinds of SaaS businesses, uh, biotechnology that I've sort of have a particular love for. Actually, my brother Ingvar, who got into that field a number of years ago, he's really taught me a lot and brought me into interesting companies. And you know, we've done a lot of work together, which is great. Great to get to work with your brothers. Um,
Well, yeah, and
and then
Ari's at Index, right? So
we also work together, and that's
yeah,
great. He's fantastic.
yeah.
Absolutely, no, it's wonderful. It's actually really cool. Um,
And I'm told he
and then
actually speaks Italian. That's what you
he
told
does
me.
speak Italian. Absolutely, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit why? And then we'll have two
Our
last
mother,
questions,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
our mother dated an Italian physicist for 10 years, who was a great guy, Paolo Di Vecchia. And you know, I was old enough that he was more like just a good buddy to me. But for Ari, he was, you know, he kind of, you know, he got to know, well, they spent a lot of time together, and he brought Ari to Italy, and even at one point, I think, left him with his mother. So Ari had this Italian grandmother, and yeah, he speaks very good Italian.
And maybe we should have interviewed Ari as well, so that we can have
In Italian.
in Italian, exactly. Okay, so last two
No.
questions here. Um, so you traveled to Italy last year. You know, Italy is near and dear to my heart. Do you like going on vacation to Italy? I think you enjoy it, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been going to Italy
Okay.
since I was a kid.
So if we invite you next year, you'll probably come to Italy if it works.
I'll totally come, of course.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think that's it for now.
Sure.
Really, really, really enjoyed. Always have a blast, David. You know, you and I
Hey,
chatting.
super nice to talk. It's a little. It's
Yes.
always funny to kind of speak in front of an audience that you have no conception of. You can't
Oh
see them. I
yeah.
can't hear them. It's just like, hey guys, thank you so much for listening. It's really enjoyable. And you know, you hit me up on Twitter or Facebook Messenger or something if you have follow-up questions.
Absolutely. Well, David,
Awesome.
thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, and I will put you back to an attendee. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Again, we will talk soon.
Awesome. Good night, guys.
Bye.
Good night, Gabriel. Thank you. Bye.
Wow, so that was a fantastic 2 days of Tectalia. I want to thank everybody for being here. And I don't want to forget, we do have the raffle. So we're going to do a raffle quickly. And let's see. Would you come over here to help? I've got my special raffle picker here. Let's see.
Lucky left hand.
Yeah, lucky left hand.
Okay.
For the Mole Cola. Let's see.
No, that's not the one.
Okay, so no one's on that one. Okay.
Okay, the next one. Okay, I see something is written on this one. Let's see.
Sure.
It is Felix.
Ah, Felix Staritz. So I will reach out to you.
That's our winner.
So that's our first winner, and I think I'm gonna have one more winner. I'm calling out myself this time. Yes,
okay.
Okay. Got one more winner for a Tectalia t-shirt. Okay, you wanna read it? Who is it?
Okay, but I can't. Yeah, you really hide it. It is.
Ah, we have Pascolita Campus. So you're the winner of a Tectalia t-shirt. We will reach out to you both directly for this. Thank you so much.
Very cool.
Everybody, thank you for attending Tectalia for the last 2 days. We had such a fun time putting this together, the whole team. I want to thank my family, my best friends. I want to thank the team. Amber for the designs, AJ, Raymond and Dee on all the tech side, Z on the tech side in London, Casper as well in France on the tech side, and Eric's helping with the website. I want to thank all of the speakers for attending and for speaking and for giving us insight into their lives and answering all of our questions. Their talks will be available if you were not able to make the whole event. So we'll be having them posted on our website online. You'll be able to access them. And I want to thank our incredible sponsors, Endeavor Italy, Campari, Human Capital Network, Hotel Bellman Cipriani, Maserati, Ciccone's, Illo, Mole Cola, Gianluca Fellini. Thank you, all of you. This has been an incredible event, and please email me at andiamo@tectalia.org if you have any questions. And for those that have the VIP tickets, we'll be reaching out directly to get your information for the sizes of the t-shirts, and so you can get your Campari and a bunch of other awesome goodies. And I think I wanted to take one moment to thank everybody for joining and to really focus on this idea in this day and age that we can all come together virtually, because next year we're going to do it in person. And this event is a global event focused, yes, and inspired by Italy, but really bringing the world together. So thank you again, and have a wonderful weekend, and we will be in touch, and we hope to see you next year. Ciao. Grazie mille.